Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to my video presentation today, this evening. I want to discuss about patriarchy in Blossoms of the Savannah. And I want to call upon our learners so that to be a bit concentrative on these, because that it's a very high likelihood that they're going to get help out of this. Before I present, I need to call upon the world so that we hold hands together as we fight this pandemic, COVID-19, which has been a world and a global problem for all this time. So I want to call upon everybody to take the serious considerations and cautions that the World Health Organization are advising the world, washing hands, sanitizing hands, putting on masks, social distances, and so on. So I want to call upon the world and everybody here to be a bit candid to the restrictions that are normally given by the World Health Organization. And above all, I wish to call all Kenyans to make sure that they follow the restricted rules that are put in place by our health ministry. And I hope by the end of it, we shall conquer this. We shall come out victors. Like I said previously, we had some world pandemics which has existed for the last 100 years. For example, I said we have the French flu, which happened 100 years ago, and it claimed 50 million people, and at long last we defeated. We also had the World War, which happened in 1945 and claimed 65 million people, and at long last we defeated all that. Even COVID-19 is not an exception. We are likely going to defeat it, and we shall come out victors. Our economy, our social interaction, political framework, governance, and our interaction shall come back to normal. We are very optimistic over that. Now, today, I want to introduce our learners to our written literature, and we shall have a look on the text, Blossoms of the Savannah. I want to handle a question on patriarchy. Patriarchy is a male dominance where women are treated like second-class citizens. That is what we call masculinity, toxic masculinity, where the men gender is, of course, suppressing and oppressing the female gender, so that we have an unbalanced society, which, of course, does not treat both men and women as equal citizens. So in Blossoms of the Savannah, the writer is presenting us with a society with cultural dictates, which puts a woman as a second-class citizen. They are not treated equally as men. So we find that men have a greater and slightly higher dominance and an influence in that society. So in the text Blossoms of Savannah, we have a lot of men chauvinism, what is called misogyny. Misogyny is that toxic masculinity where men are oppressing and suppressing women, and women have exactly no social there's no social say. They does not control the economy, they does not control politics. But at long last, we finally have some women who are very outgoing. At the end of it all, we have a very good example of a woman called Macrae, who is very outgoing. She's trying to fight the very dominant culture which is in Asila, and we shall explain that more. Now, we have several instances, and I want to take our learners through the instances that are happening in the text, Blossom of the Savannah, that brings us to the fact that there is men chauvinism, misogyny, or call it dominance in this case, where women are not given that equal opportunity. The first one is the relocation of the Kailo family from Nakuru to Nasila. We realize that Mama Milano is not informed. She is not aware that a relocation is going to happen, that they're going to move from Nakuru to Nasila. Or Kailo Parsimi does not inform Mama Kailo that they're going to move from Nakuru to Nasila. This is a clear indication of dominance and chauvinism, because Kailo, as we expect from the modern societies, that there should be a sort of partnership and a feedback and a communication between couples. But we find the man does not inform the woman, and out of that, we realize that Mama Milano and the girls are just informed of that very day, in that evening, in that morning, that they're going to move. This is a very good and a clear information that there is a lot of male dominance in that society. Number two, we have a preparation for the homecoming ceremony of Olekailo Parsimi, we realize that there is no woman, there is no single woman who is involved or who is included in the planning of the homecoming ceremony. We also we only realize that it is only the Ilmonilian youngsters, who were just informed by the younger brother of Olekailo Simiren. He informs the entire clan that they're going to prepare for a homecoming ceremony, but there's no woman who is involved in that. That is a clear indication of sidelining women in that social strata. So we find that there is a sort of male dominance over women, where women are treated like second-class citizens. They're not involved in anything, therefore creating a very unbalanced social status in that Nasilan society. Number three, we have an interaction with the girls, where we find that Olekailo Parsimi calls Joseph Parmuat to coach the girls to become responsible women. This one is a situational irony, but at the same time, it brings us a very good example of dominance, of male dominance, because we don't expect a man to coach a woman to become a responsible woman. Look at Joseph Parmuat. I mean, how can Mr. Kailo bring Joseph Parmuat as a coach, as an advisor of the young girls to become responsible women? This is a situation of irony. It doesn't happen. But because of men dominance, where men only believe that any responsibility and any role model can only come from men, we realize that Kailo calls Joseph Parmuat to come along and coach the girls. But unfortunately, we could not expect this one in modern societies. But he does this intentionally because there is no any role and responsibility that women can play over men. Number four is Macrae versus Odesopeo. We find that Macrae has been, in this case, a crusader against FGM and early marriages. And it happens that someday he visits Olesopeo. Olesopeo is a prominent elder in Asila, a rich man. He's a trader, he's a cattle trader who is very rich. But again, he's a capitalist, where he advocates for men dominance, and he oppresses and suppresses women. The writer tells us that even he educates most of his boys, and one of them has even gone to the university, but none of his girls has ever gone, to school. Why does he do this? Because he does not advocate for girls' empowerment and all that. That's why he educates boys and does not educate girls. So it happens one day that Macrae goes to his homestead and tries to advise the old man that please educate both girls and boys and please stop FGM. But we realize that a dramatic situation happened where the girl was threatened and even thrown out of the homestead, and the writer tells us she was almost clobbered, out of that situation, because that fellow is very hungry. Very angry of the lady, who tries to advise otherwise, which means the girl is a threat to the Nasilan culture. So we realize that there is a male dominance over there, because one, this fellow educates boys against or over girls. Number two, he throws a Mercury out of the homestead because he will never listen to that advice given by the girl. Number last is we have what is called a public opinion, which was made by this old man called Olemusanga. There is an old man called Olemusanga in the text, who is a custodian of the Nasilan culture, who is given to preside over that function of the homecoming ceremony of Olekailo Parsimi. Now, this man, before the beginning of the ceremony, he first curses the ceremony and blesses it after all. Why does he do this? He does this because he blesses anybody who is for the culture and curses anybody who is a threat to the culture. And he goes on and make a public opinion and says and discourages anybody who goes, who is with this girl called a Macrae, that is Minik Enengotoi, who is a crusader against FGM. So he advises any member of the public that anybody who is with a Macrae is cast culturally. Why? Because he says that he describes the girl as a wasp, Entangori in that code. I called it Entangori. She's a wasp. She's a threat to the Maasai culture. So he curses anybody who associates with this girl. but blesses anybody who goes, as per the cultural dictates. And out of that, we realize that there's no room, there's no room for girls, because the old man, is in this case, sidelines women, and he does not advocate anything from a Macrae, even if as readers we understand that a Macrae is a crusader for change, but he does not have any room, for that change in that society. So out of that, those are the instances that brings us to explain the fact that the text Blossoms of the Savannah is very patriarchal, very men. I mean, it is men dominated. There is a lot of chauvinism. There is a lot of what is called, toxic masculinity, or in this case, there is too much oppression and suppression of women in that society. So the society is socially unbalanced, where women are not given, equal opportunities as men, and therefore, they're treated as second-class citizens. So out of that, I wish to conclude the most learners that that brings us to the end of our presentation. The fact that the text Blossoms of the Savannah is patriarchal, it is men dominated, and out of that, the writer is presenting towards two different warring cultures. That is the modernist, led by Macrae, who were advocating for change, and of course the traditionalists, who were led by the old and prominent men, led by Olusupeo and Olomsanga. So that is the end of our presentation. Thank you. Take care. Stay at home so that sanitize your hand, put on mask, keep a social distance. Thank you.